Hello and welcome to today's web seminar. Today we'll be talking about why trucking insurance agencies fail at lead generation. This web seminar is brought to you by StartUpSelling and features two subject matter expert speakers today, the first of which is Alan Bloom. Alan's the CEO and founder of StartUpSelling. He's twice been named to the Inc. 500 list. He's published 2 books and has written over 150 insurance marketing articles. Second, my name is John Scranton. I'm an agency marketing pro, was previously a licensed agent with a top 100 agency, and I've written over 1,000 insurance marketing blogs. So in today's fun and fast-moving session, we're going to explain why trucking agencies fail at lead generation by answering 10 questions and giving 10 reasons as to why they fail. The most common of which, I'll pose to you, Alan, this question, is why do agencies fail to make sufficient prospecting calls?
Thank you, John, and we're going to start with you. John is the opportunity, and John Scranton is an example of the problem. So when John started with the top 100 insurance agency, his first year he made quite a few calls. He was pounding the phones. His second year he dramatically curtailed his calls, and his third year he did almost none. This is a common story, and it gets to the fundamental problem, which is producers do not want to be pounding the phones. Arguably, you could say they will not cast a broad net and pound the phones. So John is a great example. John built a nice book of business. I can't remember, John, $600,000 or $700,000, and shortly thereafter actually came to StartUpSelling to our benefit. So John is an example, but it's not just trucking insurance agencies, it's all insurance agencies and even other types of companies. Here's a story about Joe, very good friend of mine. Joe started as a sales rep. First year, that's all he did. He pounded the phones. A few years later, Joe would never be on the phones. And as a matter of fact, cut a deal with an inside telemarketing group to make sure they were hitting his territory really well so that he could work on better qualified leads. A very common story. He is an extremely successful sales executive now. So the truth behind the numbers, when you boil down the ocean, is the likelihood you will have your producers doing a good job casting a wide net and getting those calling numbers consistently up is extremely low. John, let's go on to the next one. And I'll pose this one to you. John, why do agencies fail to develop an effective prospect list?
Well, Alan, as you know, I manage many of our trucking agency lead gen programs personally, and the most common reason I see that agencies fail to have an effective prospect list with a sufficient number of names is because they don't subscribe to a quality list vendor who will pull data from the DOT. So most of you already know this. In case there's some newer trucking producers on the line, all trucking entities must report their information to the DOT. There's companies out there that will pull that information, aggregate it, and sell it to you in a sortable format. So you can say, I want these states, that size accounts, this cargo with this many violations, and get a list that is exactly what you want. Some of them are quite inexpensive. If you do that, you'll have a sufficient number of prospects, probably an abundance of prospects, making your calls that much more effective, or your outsourced appointment setting partners' calls that much more effective. So once you have the list, well, there's still other ways it could break. You need to make sure that you're properly scrubbing or culling the list so that the list only consists of the people that you want to write. If your carriers don't like hazmat, don't waste time calling people with hazmat. You have cargo codes in those lists. If you can't write people with under 3 years of experience, make sure you scrub those out. Their years in business will be on this list as well. And you also need to consistently update this list. Your prospect list will atrophy over time. It's kind of a living thing. You'll find people who are qualified, people who aren't, people who want to do business with you, people who don't. But you need to make sure as these entities change in size and scope, you're always updating the list. A DOT type vendor can do that for you, or you can do it yourself. So the next question we have Alan, I'll ask to you, why do producers struggle with lead handling process?
So we don't mean to answer this in a glib way, but we speak with many agencies that just don't have one. When we talk about what is your lead handling process, can you show it to me? The answer is often, no, we don't really have a formal process, and I can't, it's definitely not documented, I can't show it to you. So the first thing we say is, hey, let's create a lead handling process. You folks should create a lead handling process. It should be documented, and it might vary based on the type of leads. If you're going from 5 power units to 150, you're probably going to handle a 50 power unit account much differently than a 5, or even a greater disparity is if you're going from owner operated to 500, very different types of leads. So that's the first issue. There is not a lead handling process, and as you'll see in a second, nobody's closing the loop. There's also missing components. This is a huge part of the process. A lead handling process should be, for example, I get a lead in, it's an appointment, it's next Thursday, they have 14 power units, they're hauling, hazmat, they are dealing in a 3-state region and so on. And I am now going to send them a confirmation, an appointment confirmation via Outlook, for example. I'm going to send them a piece of collateral 2 days later or that day. I am going to be prepared for the meeting with this meeting methodology, and here's how I'm going to handle the no-shows. Many people on the line today, and we have a lot of people who signed up for this webinar, many people probably haven't done this, and it's crucial to an effective appointment setting campaign, an effective lead campaign. Lastly, they don't track and measure the results. They do not close the loop, which is simply how many appointments were set, how many power units total per appointment, what's the total opportunity, how many of those showed up for an appointment, what happened to those people, and what happened to the people who didn't show up. John, those are crucial for lead handling. So let's now go to question 4. Why do agencies fail to create a consistent and professional meeting and presentation process?
In the years I was an agency producer, I worked with a lot of different people, and many of them were great and very successful, but oftentimes we found that it just wasn't on the radar to have a formalized process for meetings. You get comfortable, you get used to what you're doing, and you start to wing it. And, that doesn't mean you can't be successful. However, there may be missed nuances that become very important when you're working in a lead gen environment compared to a cross-selling referral-based environment. These people may not have the same rapport or familiarity with you or your agency as you're used to selling, so you need to make sure that you have an agenda and a process and a methodology that are effective so that you can qualify people, gather information, that you have a series of questions to ask them, and you have a series of answers to give to the common question they'll ask you. So why does it happen, or why does it not happen? If it's not on the radar, it may become on the radar, and then you're still too busy to prepare. You're already out presenting and closing, and your agency probably isn't providing you with a structure. Here's a sample agenda, sample talking points. Here's 10 questions that you should be asking, 10 things you should be saying about your program. Those aren't common tools for trucking agency producers to have. So if you can start this on your own, start building a structure to make sure that you gather the information you need and present the important points about your value proposition, your meetings will be much more effective, and you'll begin to build that process for initial meetings and presentations as you move forward. The next question we have, Alan, why do agencies fail to create a consistent lead gen drip campaign?
And this gets back to the point of what happens to people who don't show up, and what happens to people who are in the pipeline who did not purchase. And that living, what you were talking about earlier, John, that prospect list is a living thing, that January 2016 should be different than January 2017. So commonly what we find happens is, one, back to your list, agencies don't have a good list or an updated list. And of course in this case we mean an email list. Two, they do not have content to share. They don't know, they don't have a value proposition content. They don't have a blog. They don't have webinars. They don't have videos. They don't have industry updates. They just don't have much to share. And that, of course, that can be either done internally or outsourced. They don't have an engine that they know how to use or like to use. And that can range the gambit from very sophisticated dynamic content, eye contact pro email marketing, for example, to extremely simple email marketing, like with constant contact. Regardless, they don't have the engine or they don't have the skill set to do that. One of the most effective things after appointment setting for trucking agencies is a lead gen drip campaign, and together they just go great. Let's go to the next question. So John, why do agencies fail to provide updated website or printed collateral, or both in this case?
Well, what I've found in working with agencies or at agencies over the years is they probably just don't have any quality collateral that's agency specific or trucking program specific available. You probably have boxes full of brochures that carriers have left in the office, in the conference room, or over by the copy machine. And they may have some important information, but they're not about you and they're not about your program. They're probably about the coverage limits as opposed to the tremendous success story you had in lowering a transportation firm's XMOD from 1.2 to 0.85 over the last 2 years. And that's the kind of information that you want your collateral to share. So that leads to bullet number 2. Producers might be unsure of what to say. How do I write great collateral, and what type of information should be shared? Is it simply a rehash of the kind of bullets that are on our website, or is it something that's more compelling and more interesting and more personal to the people that I'm trying to target? And it's certainly the latter. Those who realize that are probably still too busy to sit down and write something, and most agencies don't have the resources to put something like this together. You may not have a writer, you may not have an editor, you may not have a graphic designer, and if somebody actually has a great marketing or lead gen department who can do all those things, you still need some printing capability and production capability to put these together. So many agencies fail to have outstanding collateral that can be emailed to people digitally or printed and left behind at meetings, and that can be one of the reasons why they fail at lead generation. The next question we have, Alan, why do agencies fail to invest in mobile websites and content?
So this has been an evolving question. The answer 5 years ago might have been was dramatically different than the answer today. I'm not sure how many people realize this, but today when we send out a drip campaign on behalf of a trucking agency to, let's say, prospects in Maine and New Hampshire, if we're sending out a drip campaign, 60% of those emails or more will be opened on smartphones, and it's growing. Smartphones, mobile devices, smartphones and tablets and phablets, those types of devices are becoming dominant, especially with a mobile workforce like truckers. At night, truckers are spending their time, potentially in their cabs, especially, owner-operators, but even a trucker with a small fleet might do this. But regardless, many people, including executives, will review their emails on phone. I bet John Scranton reviews the majority of his emails now on his smartphone, on his iPhone. So a lot of agencies don't recognize how pervasive mobile has now become. They also may lack the time and skills to do anything about it, even if they realize it. And they're also, this happens frequently, they're unaware of how to test mobile, because you have to test for an Android, an Apple, multiple devices, a tablet, the formatting, the responsive design, and of course the Google Mobile Friendly test. So if you haven't thought about how you're looking from a mobile device standpoint, the time is now. You've got to do that right away. John, let's go to the next question. So John, Why are agencies falling behind in social media marketing?
You know, we often find they just don't care. A nicer way to say might be they underestimate the importance. And if you're a very successful producer with $1 million book and you're not looking for lead generation, first of all, you probably didn't register for this webinar today. But secondly, you're doing all your selling through cross-selling and referrals. You're not actively engaged in lead generation targeting new business. So you probably do underestimate the importance of social media. But those of you who are newer producers or younger producers who are aggressively seeking to grow, and agencies who are actively involved in lead generation, trying to feed those newer, younger producers to help them build their books, hopefully are not underestimating the importance of social media. At a minimum, your social media needs to be professional and active so that it's not a hole. Now, many of your buyers are younger, 30s, early 40s, people who have had social media for more than a decade, are very comfortable with it, and will use it as one of their checking points to determine your professionalism and to build their impression of you and your agency. So if your agency has no LinkedIn company page or you don't have a LinkedIn personal profile, or you do and it has no information, compared to your competition, that's a weakness. That's a hole that needs to be fixed because when you call somebody, the first thing they'll do is punch your name into Google. One of the early results that should show up is a beautiful professional LinkedIn profile, and you should also have profiles at least for yourself and for the agency on Facebook, Twitter, and Google Plus that appear professional. In case anybody sees them, you have activity, you're sharing expertise, and they reflect the agency's branding and theme. Another reason these things don't get done is people simply don't have time. Yes, I admit, I know it's important, but I'm already working 50, 60 hours a week. I don't have time to goof around on social media. That's where a marketing person or an outsourced solution that can manage this for you and make sure as ever-changing social media platforms evolve, you always stay current, can be really helpful. Or people just simply don't understand how to professionally brand social profiles and leverage those profiles and the content on those profiles to interact with or engage with their prospects and clients. So don't underestimate social media's importance. It's not going away. Make sure that you turn it into an asset and don't allow it to become a liability. Alan, the next question we have, what happens at the bottom of the sales funnel when prospects do not purchase from you?
And this gets back a little bit to the point you were just making. Social media doesn't necessarily drive tons of leads to you. It helps move people further down the pipeline as you're working your leads. So the fastest path to trucking leads is a dedicated appointment setting campaign just for your organization and the profile that you seek, giving thousands of outbound calls to find those truckers and fleets that want to make a change. And two, the email marketing campaigns that we're talking about. Those are the fastest path. But meanwhile, we want to move people down this funnel that we're showing you here, and ultimately they either close or they don't. So for those that close, great. They're in your pipeline. You have they're now clients. You have complete control over it. But for those who don't close, nothing happens, or they get lost, or they get forgotten. That gets back to some of the tracking we talked about earlier, and it also is crucial that these people stay as prospects. They went down your funnel. They may not buy today, but they might buy next year. So you want to bring them back to your list one way or another, to your drip campaign or your calls, so that as their X date approaches within the appropriate window, 90 days or whatever it happens to be, you're back talking to them if appropriate for that business. John, let's go to the last question. So John, and this is a really good segue from our last point, why do agencies fail to track their marketing and lead generation results?
Well, I think I can give you an example that most of you on the line today can relate to, that I certainly lived that will show why many agencies don't closely track the results of lead gen campaigns and marketing campaigns. So you have a telemarketing service, for example, an appointment setting firm, and appointments are coming in and they're emailed to you, and at night or early in the morning, you print off the email, you stuff it in your briefcase with your computer and your lunch, and you go off to appointments. And then you call these people from a rest area, a gas station, wherever you're eating lunch, and you jot down the notes on the back of that email and stuff it back in your briefcase. And a couple days later, you're in the office and you have a little time and you pull those notes out and you make a follow-up call, and maybe it continues to quote. And at that point, it may finally get into your agency management system, or maybe it doesn't, and that piece of paper gets left on your desk or stuffed in a drawer and disappears forever. And that's why we're all so busy, we don't have time to track. At least that's what we think as producers, right? And most agencies don't provide you with easy tracking tools, a matrix to say you had this many leads, which turned into this many appointments, which turned into this many quotes, this many closes, something that can easily and quickly show you and the people managing or tracking your marketing and lead gen campaigns what the successes are or aren't. Producers who say, geez, I'd love to be doing better with this, are often just unsure of how to get started. They don't have time to stay up late at night and create that matrix. Marketing might not be their background. So what ends up happening is nothing. A few leads from a telemarketing campaign get into the system, and at the end of that campaign, when the boss says, should we continue or not, they look and have very little data to go on. They ask the producers, who are so busy they can't remember all of the appointments. They don't know where those printed off emails with notes on the back have disappeared to, and that ends up being the failure of many lead gen campaigns, because there's simply nothing to base a decision on if nothing has been tracked. So develop a system, make sure you're tracking results. Without it, you don't know whether or not you're failing at lead gen, which in essence is a failure itself. So with that, those 10 questions are the most common reasons why we see transportation agencies fail at lead generation. To help all of you, hopefully, with your lead gen campaigns, we are offering a complimentary review for each and every one of you. You can send me an email or give me a call. My contact information is on the screen. We'll schedule a 15-minute web meeting to run through these types of questions with you to determine what may be holding back your marketing or lead gen campaign, and determine if you may need to refine something, if you need to improve something, or if you simply need a full overhaul of your results. So with that, today's web seminar is now ending. We hope you all have a great day.